Hello, I'm David Hepworth. Thanks for clicking this word in your ear, the latest of hundreds of chats Mark, Ellen and I have had over recent years, some between ourselves and others with musicians, authors, comedians, and other people we like. If you'd like to help make sure they continue, you might consider being a Patreon supporter by visiting patreon.com/wordinyour-ear, or just by liking or subscribing in whatever way you prefer. On with the show.
Word in Your Attic, a Zoom with a view.
Welcome to another Word in Your Attic, and someone who was a dancer, touring with the Pet Shop Boys, and now very wonderfully plays the part of Iggy Pop in the band Lust for Life that she formed with Clem, Burke and Glen, Matlock. It's Katie Puckrik. Katie, lovely to see you.
Good to see you, Mark.
But look, we're going to talk about just early musical memories, really. So I'm going to transport you back to your early life, which I think you were born in Virginia, was it, in the United States?
Yeah, so I was born in Virginia, but very quickly, because my dad was in the military, he was in the Air Force, we zipped over to Berlin in the height of the Cold War. I also lived in Moscow. I also lived in the Rust Belt of America. I lived in Indiana. So I've been everywhere, Mark.
Wow, amazing. That's incredible. So what were your first memories? We always ask people what record playing device they can remember in the family home. Can you remember what music would have been emanating from?
Yeah, I was really lucky because I have an older sister and two older brothers, and they're like 10, 12, 13 years older. So therefore, they were already in the heat and the heart of their musical appreciation, which was all Beatles, coming out of a record player. Although for me, it was Tubby the Tuba. So I remember being 3 years old and loving Tubby the Tuba. And what was the other one? Peter and the Wolf. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm trying to remember now with the various instruments. The bassoon plays the duck or something, doesn't it? I'm trying to remember now.
That's right, yeah, the bassoon plays the duck. And the Basil Rathbone was the narrator. Many years later, David Bowie narrated a version.
He did.
The Wolf. But so I was always like a little, even before my dance training, I was always a dancer, but I was always attuned to music, and that was thanks to my siblings. And so really early on when we were living in Berlin, of course, my sister was too cool to want her goofy little younger toddler sister hanging around. So I would very tragically and pathetically throw myself on the floor outside her bedroom, listening through the crack, and I could hear Beatles, Meet the Beatles, Help, those were the albums. And then also really cool, This Is Soul, which was a compilation, a Stax compilation, and also Motown. So that was all happening in the mid-'60s when I was a kid.
What do you remember on the This Is Soul album? What particular track?
Do You Like Soul Music? When a Man Loves a Woman, B.A.B.Y., Carla Thomas. To this day, I love that song. So, yeah, this stuff was, I gleaned it all by osmosis.
And was there I had three elder sisters, and so there we used to fight about which our favourite. We were only allowed one Beatle each to be our favourite. Did you have a favourite? I finished up with George, which I thought was pretty good, actually.
Yeah, that's pretty tasty of you. I wasn't, they were just four sounds. There was not an individual Beatle in my head that I glommed onto when I first learned about them. However, by the time I was about 8 years old, I'd somehow inherited somebody's Beatles scrapbook, and I think it would have been a friend of my sister or something. So this was a carefully constructed scrapbook from the beginning of the Beatles. And so it had taped into its yellowing pages tear sheets from 16 magazine and Tiger Beat, which were American pop, teenage girl magazines. And so what I gleaned from that was Jane Asher, who was Paul's girlfriend at the time. She was the devil because So there was lots of like Jane Asher photographs with targets stuck on her head because she was the enemy, because she had the love of Paul. She had stolen his heart. So all I understood was Jane Asher was bad. She was a villain. And so I made up a song that went, alarm, alarm, Jane Asher's on the loose. Alarm, alarm. So the idea was she was coming to get you. She was the bogeyman.
That's fantastic. That's brilliant. I think Jane Asher was keenly aware of all this sort of thing, not specifically your song, but I think it must have been a blessed relief when she
imagine
packed it all in. Oh my God, how amazing! Can you remember the first records you bought?
Yeah. So I have to say my mother sort of inadvertently was cool, bought me some cool records. That would have been not from the cutout bin, but at the time in the early 70s, there would have been selections of records that you could get at the local drugstore. And so she bought me the Friends album by Beach Boys, which people who are sort of marginally into the Beach Boys think, oh, by the 70s, they were washed up. No, Friends album, great, wonderful. However, the first record that I ever bought with my pocket money was kind of naff. It was by a band called The Bells, and it was Softly Whispering I Love You was the song. And it had like these young celestial voiced women trilling away in a very anodyne fashion. And then a very hairy chested sounding man would come in and warble over the top of them. However, then I redeemed myself with my second 45, which was Rod Stewart, double A side, Maggie May, and Reason to Believe.
What a great record.
Yeah.
I'm sure The Bells is a great record, but I have to say I don't know it. But no, Maggie May, that's fantastic.
And I...
so roughly how old would you have been when Rod was putting those sort of records out?
Oh, I was in fourth grade. So that would have been in America. That was, I was 9 years old. And
fantastic.
My fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Cum, Kumm, don't get excited, Mark. She was quite a character. She was about 4 foot tall, 4 foot wide, big bouffant of either tinged pink or blue hair. And she wore Pucci mini dresses and then little patent leather ankle boots. And she was very creative, and she encouraged her little 9-year-old charges to be creative. And one of the things she liked us to do was to bring in our favorite song, and then she'd have the whole class learn it. And we would stand up in front of parents on Parents' Day and sing it. So I very proudly brought in Maggie May, and she wasn't quite as hip as I thought, Mark, because she said, oh, his voice is scratchy, doesn't have a good voice. This isn't a good song. So out it went. She was down on Rod the Moth.
He was rejected.
He was rejected. So I was very sad about that.
I wonder if she grew to love him in the end.
Well, I hope that she gave me credit for being an early adopter.
Oh, yeah. You were ahead of the curve there. That's amazing. So were there any posters on the bedroom wall? Probably Rod Stewart. I don't know.
Well, I wish I could say that I was groovy enough to appreciate Rod, but David Cassidy, he was the one that had my heart. I mean, he's all things to all people. He looks like a girl. He, apparently was very much a boy in his enjoyment of the ladies. The many, many ladies who were, washed.
But he looked unthreatening, didn't he?
He certainly threatened my incipient girlhood. I can tell you that. I did meet him.
I was going to say, did you ever? Because it's always such an extraordinary thing to meet someone after all those years. How did that go?
Well, it was kind of funny because I was doing the American version of my TV variety show Pajama Party in Los Angeles. This was around 2001 or so. And we went out to Las Vegas where he then was living, and he had a show that he was in, like a nightly show. And so the producers kind of tricked me. I was the executive producer, but somehow I went along with the ruse. So I obviously did not have my eye on the prize. And they said, look, we wanted you to meet David. Unfortunately, he's under the weather, but you can go and see his show. And they said it would be fine for you to go and check out his dressing room, and we'll just film it for the episode. And I just bought it hook, line, and sinker. Enjoyed the show. Went backstage. Went to the dressing room.
This is a setup. Yeah.
Total setup. I was looking at a framed photograph of him on the wall, going, "Oh, look at his peachy little hindquarters and in that denim dungaree outfit that he's wearing." And then I heard this voice behind me go, "You really think so?"
No.
David! And I had gotten so keyed up, Mark, at this stage about the whole idea of just, I think I had method acted myself back into my 9-year-old head.
Oh, yeah.
And so by the time I turned and saw him, I did a total cartoon triple take, jumped, whatever I had in my hands, like flew out of my hands. And I was transported back into being a 9-year-old. But then it was a little strange because, of course, we're both kind of method acting or kind of reverting into this transaction that he's used to, which is worshipful adoration. And I was providing that transactional moment. And then it sort of uncomfortably morphed, pleasingly, but uncomfortably morphed into him sort of suggesting that we might take the night air together. And
oh, no. My Lord.
Anyway, so it was like in my head, am I 9 or am I, 39?
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
It wasn't entirely unpleasant. I liked it. I was happy to have met him.
Oh, yeah. But those things are set in stone, those relationships, aren't they?
Yeah.
And if you felt that way about somebody, then no matter what they might look like or how many years later on it is, you're still going to be, that's going to be reactivated. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, it was reactivated.
How brilliant. Oh, that's good. How were you? Did you remember how you bought records? Do you remember where you bought them from?
Yeah, just dollars, paper money, and went to begin with, it would have been a local drugstore in a strip mall or something, and in the suburbs where I was living. But by the time I was honing my tastes in my teen years, which I was always a very eclectic appreciator of the sonics. And by the time I had a driving license at age 16, I would be driving to the groovy import record store. So I was living in Vienna, Virginia, when I was a teenager, which is in Northern Virginia outside Washington, D.C. And they had a shop called Penguin Feather. And that had all the Roxy Music imports and the cool Brian Eno imports. And I was trying to get into punk rock, I guess by, I don't know, 1978 or something.
Were you talking about British punk rock?
Well, no.
American punk rock.
I liked everything from jazz fusion to yacht rock, as it wasn't known as yacht rock then, but also art rock. I was really big into anything arty, so I would have loved Kate Bush and David Bowie and all this. But also I was aware, okay, punk rock's happening, and I would have been aware from cool college radio stations like WHFS, WGTB. These were local college radio stations. So I went into Penguin Feather and was looking like, what's punk rock? I need to buy a punk rock record. And I bought something by, I can't remember. It was like a local band. And the song was, I Want to Be a Punk Rock Janitor. And the song went, I want to be a punk rock janitor. So it was like yelpy and weird and stupid and pandering. And I never really liked it because it wasn't authentic, was it? It was just somebody cashing in.
That's a cheap pastiche, I would have said.
It was a cheap pastiche.
Yeah. But American, was this Penguin Feather? That's America, right? We're talking about Virginia.
Yeah, we're talking Vienna, Virginia. And then driving into Washington, D.C., and there would be any number of independent record shops that had wonderful imports. And that's also where I was buying Enemies and Melody Makers and Face magazines and Blitz magazines. So that's how
would you describe yourself as a bit of an Anglophile then?
Yeah. 100%. Because, I was across, now we're talking, late 70s, I'm across British music that's the new British music. So whether it's XTC or Kate Bush or stranger things like I'm thinking about the Au Pairs or indie music. So Anglophile, but also.
Did it seem very kind of, you probably romanticize it somewhat if you're, Americans had this very kind of romantic view of what British punk rock was like, which was actually very kind of sticky floor and grubby and fragrant, but
the what really captured my imagination, I mean, the punk energy was exciting and the look was exciting. The music didn't quite, that British punk did not connect with me at that time. I mean, I love the poppier side of things, obviously, like Buzzcocks and the Damned, like certain things that were just straight ahead poppy, New Rose. But American punk rock, I love. So Ramones, I'm thinking, and there are those who say very compellingly that American punk was first, which it really was after New York Dolls. And then you had Suicide, and you had that New York scene, which was television and Ramones and Suicide and Blondie and Patti Smith group. So that was...
Did you see any of those in the early days?
Well, I did, because by the time I was, had my driver's license, that was the key to be able to get downtown to Washington, D.C. and then, sneak into clubs that I wasn't really legal. I wasn't even barely legal. It was not legal, but I was in those clubs. So, funnily enough, in 77, 78, I think it was, I saw the Police on their first tour. And there were about 25 people in this club, the Atlantic Bar in DC, and Roxanne was their song. And I just remember seeing like these three bouncy men with matching
zip up jumpsuits. I saw them at the same time. They were supporting Steel Pulse in Berlin.
Oh, that's a cool,
exactly the same thing. And it was ran at exactly the same time. And they were fantastic, weren't they? Were a little pop group.
Little pop group. And then, but at that same era, I was seeing loads of bands coming down from New York. 78, I saw the Parallel Lines tour, the Blondie tour, which was like to think every time that I was on stage with this band I did celebrating Iggy Pop called Lust for Life with Clem Burke, the Blondie drummer, and then Glen Matlock, the Sex Pistols bass player, now Blondie bassist. And then Kevin Armstrong, who played with both and Iggy through the years. I just was pinching myself every night on those tours thinking, I still remember being a teenager and, pogoing in the audience to Parallel Lines, which is a flawless album.
How did that group come about, Lust for Life? How did you get involved with that?
That was that was put together by a visionary named Tom Wilcox, who his stock in trade, amongst his many trades, is to formulate bands out of the ashes of the legendary bands they used to be in. So in this instance, he thought, well, let's get a group of Iggy musicians together. And both Clem and Glen and also band leader.
They'd all toured with him, hadn't they?
Yeah, they all performed and wrote with him and played with him and recorded with him. And then the wild card was me as the singer. And so I used to sing. That was when I came over to London in the 80s, and I was doing music, and I was also performing as a contemporary dancer. And
actually, a side tangent to that, you were then a dancer with Pet Shop Boys, weren't you, as we were talking about earlier?
I toured on their 91 tour called Performance, and you can still go on YouTube and see clips of me dressed variously as
what were you wearing?
Oh, what wasn't I wearing, Mark? I mean, it was like 17 Broadway shows put into one. It was an incredible tour. You can still access the whole concert on YouTube, but I was dressed as a schoolboy, a British schoolboy. I was dressed as a Playboy bunny in a little satin sort of bathing suit thing with a little cotton bunny tail. I was dressed as a a mummy. I was dressed as a pumpkin-headed 50s schoolgirl. I mean, there was all sorts going on there.
That must have been an absolute hoot.
Yeah, it was. That was.
I've read those Chris Heath books about his tours with the Pet Shop Boys, where he just wanders around writing down their impossible witticisms the entire time. It sounded so funny.
It's accurate. I'm in that Chris's book, The Pet Shop Boys versus America, and Penny Smith did the photographs. There's a picture of me at the most essential part of every day, which was eating my bowl of soup in catering before going on stage. But that, they were lovely bosses, Chris Lowe and Neil Tennant. And they thoroughly enjoyed, what was wonderful about them was that they were never jaded. They were never being boring, to quote one of their lyrics. And they thoroughly enjoyed what they were doing and they appreciated it. And I got to see the world, albeit from first class accommodations and
there are worse ways to travel.
Yeah. So we traveled for 3 months across 50 dates, and it was a gorgeous experience. And that was the biggest job I'd ever done, and that kind of spoiled me for working in the typing pool as I was as a freelance. Manpower person.
There's no way you can go back to that.
Yeah, I couldn't go back to that. And so luckily enough, the opportunity to audition for The Word, which was the big Friday night.
Yeah, tell me about The Word. I mean, I remember that so vividly. It was such a big thing at the time, was it? It was you, Terry Christian, Mark Lamarr, and it was a kind of pre-Instagram world where anybody desperate for some kind of instant celebrity would go on The Word and do those kind of dares. I remember a guy eating a half pound of lard or something. Am I imagining this, or did that happen? You're not.
It is a fever dream come to life. And that was only one element of the show. For the uninitiated, it's sort of hard to think about now. But yeah, the key is this was pre-internet, pre-social media in the early to mid 90s. It ran for 5 seasons. And it was a live show that went out on Friday nights, 5 minutes after the pubs shut. It was at a time where there were only 4 television channels. There was not digital. Maybe if you had a little bit of money, you maybe had cable and you were on Sky. But anyway, it was destination viewing. We had it was water cooler talk. It was what everybody was talking about on the Monday after. It was live. We had the biggest Hollywood stars would come on, unsuspecting that they would be set in the middle of a baying crowd of 150 or 200 live audience members. There were also the happening, hottest bands of the day.
Oh, I remember the Nirvana appearance.
Yeah, I think Nirvana's Oasis. First television appearance. And then, as you alluded to, really intense and ridiculous live stunts. So this was a crucible. This was a petri dish, this show, The Word, of every trend that we now understand, good and bad, that happens across social media. So whether it was ridiculous stunts that you see on TikTok or, influencers making a splash that then people are copying, getting a sense of what celebrities are really like with their guard down, because they always were thrown off their game. Yeah. On live television. So I was one of the 3 or 4 hosts that was roving. And then I was always traveling to, Hollywood to interview any number of superstars or freaks.
Who were can you think of any particularly memorable ones that you talked to?
Oh, well, I remember seared on my frontal lobe as my very first day in Los Angeles when I had to interview just a bunch of seemingly random people. So my very first interview was with the movie star Demi Moore, and I was terrified. It was in a junket situation. So, she's sitting at the Four Seasons and various journalists are wheeled in for 4-minute chunks. And I was asking her impertinent questions because I'd been instructed to. Be sure and ask her about being photographed naked, pregnant on the cover of Vanity Fair.
Yeah.
So then I'm kind of doing free jazz improvisation and asking, like, what's next? Are you going to have your husband Bruce Willis doing, home movies of the live birth from your, anyway. And she very rightly fixed me with a most
steely look.
A steely look. And I thought, did I just get fired from my job by asking these questions? And it turned out it was the perfect thing to do for this extremely impertinent show. So that was followed by interviewing Barry White. And he was such a warm, lovely, interested man that I found myself going, confessing to him about my nerves, about Demi, and, this is my first day on the job. And I was so excited to meet him, and I loved his music. And he made me feel so good about myself. He was sort of rumbling with this basso profundo laugh. You're going to be a star. And so he kind of gave me a benediction that sent me happily on my way. That's
fantastic. So you're the Lust for Life tour, big success. And just wanted to ask you, how does it feel to effectively play the part of Iggy? Because you're there singing The Passenger, as you said, with Clem Burke on drums and Glen Matlock and Kevin Armstrong. So how does that feel to sing those fantastic songs?
Incredibly powerful. I feel powerful. The idea was daunting. And then as soon as I got into the material, and this is all from, we started off performing the entire album Lust for Life from beginning to end, and then also segued into other material from that era from Iggy and Bowie. The funny thing about, he would have written Lust for Life, Iggy Pop would have written it in his mid or late 20s, I think. And you think about Iggy as being this very, this sort of testosterone-fueled brat. But then when I realized, as a woman, a middle-aged woman, you have the filth and the fury within you. I tell you what, Mark, I don't know if you know any middle-aged women, but
I do.
I think we can hold a candle.
I'm married to one.
Yeah, well, there you go. We can hold a candle to any testosterone-fueled bratty rage of a 29-year-old man. And so what I'm saying is those songs are universal. And getting into the material, embodying his songs, you realize how witty he is. The commentary it's not so much about him being large and in charge. It's also him being pathetic, weak, needy, vulnerable. And, these are all things we can relate to. And the thing that is so incredible and beautiful about that experience, touring Lust for Life with these musicians, was that it kicked off my current project with Kevin Armstrong, which is called Kingdom Come. So we're taking this idea of me, a woman, powerful, ridiculous, vulnerable, pathetic, witty, all of these things, and interpreting the best of the transatlantic post-punk canon. So yes, we're going to be touring also with Iggy musicians, with Ben Ellis, and I'll have to get there. Hold on.
What kind of material are you playing?
We're playing transatlantic post-punk.
So what kind of songs?
Oh, well, we're playing across Bowie and Iggy, television, magazine, Wire, PJ Harvey, Gang of Four, some
fantastic. And you're the singer, obviously.
I'm the singer, obviously. Yeah. So we're playing. We've got a couple gigs coming up in October, on October 10th and 11th at Pizza Express Live Holborn, which is in London. And they have this like little basement boîte that hosts lots of really cool heritage acts. So it's actually kind of an interesting, intimate environment to see really dynamic performers. So
that's a brilliant bracket. I can't think how you'd really describe that music, but there is a real connection between Gang of Four, PJ Harvey, television and magazine. They're all very much in the same vein, aren't they?
And whole. I mean, the thing that links them, Mark, I think, is that they're exploding with passion, with joy. It's music that makes you feel more. Because I'm a dancer and I'm such a sensation thrill seeker, I like anything that just amplifies the situation. So whether it's delicious flavors, I'm also a perfume reviewer. I'm really activated by smells. Obviously music is a thing, clothes are a thing, dance, I'm a kinetic individual. So this is just a chance for me to get my rocks off in a pleasurable way for everyone.
Fantastic. That sounds really good. And you've also got, and we must talk about there's a box set of which by contrast is Yacht rock. So we're going from PJ Harvey, Wire and the Gang of Four to Christopher Cross and Loggins and Messina.
That's right. So I'm showing my if there is any visuals, I have a art print that's just been made that is going into the limited edition CD. But yeah, so this is a project called Katie Puckrik Presents and a Yacht Rock Odyssey, and it's it comes in two different formats. So there's a 4 CD 72 track format, and then there's a double album that has 24 tracks. And so Yacht Rock, as it is now called, it's basically mid 70s to mid 80s West Coast sounds. And this is the music that would have sailed out of my little childhood girlfriend's cassette players or the older boys' muscle car radios. And this is the music. So
this is Summer Breeze by Seals and Croft. It's that kind of thing, isn't it? Actually, I don't think that's on the record, but
it's sort of like Christopher Cross, Sailing. It's
Doobie
Brothers, What a Fool Believes. It's Average White Band. It's Toto, Africa. It's Robbie Dupree. It's George Benson.
Little Feet, I think, are on there.
Little Feet are on there.
Steve Miller Band, slightly grittier, yes.
Yeah, it's grittier. So the thing is that when you speak to people of our generation and talk about this music, they're like, well, that's just AOR. That's that's just soft rock or mellow rock. It's got yes, it's all these things. It's got kind of a jazzy spin to it. It's a little blue-eyed soul. But people decades younger associate it with, it could be Grand Theft Auto, Vice City. It's music that tracks video games that they enjoy. It's that kind of Miami Vice vibe. So there's an aesthetic that unites it. And Yacht Rock is a really great moniker that was attributed to it, to that genre of music.
Who invented that phrase?
Oh, well, it's these great guys who came up with a online series called Yacht Rock that was a gently mocking satire. And it was a scenario. It was a funny YouTube series that was a soap opera that used the characters Hall & Oates, Loggins and Messina, Michael McDonald, and set them at odds with each other in a marina setting. So the idea was that they were street toughs that were having beefs with each other, and then but set to this light soundtrack. And so it was kind of a way, it was called Yacht Rock, and it was a way to sum up this music, which is so aspirational. It's music that makes you feel sexy, happy, and rich. You can imagine somebody wearing a guy in his white blazer with the sleeves pushed up on his super yacht with his martini sailing up to the sunset. So it's music
that's completely Miami Vice. You've got Miami Vice summed up perfect, just a white blazer with the sleeves shunted up.
But the thing, the depth of this music, I mean, it's sort of easy to write it off as yuppie cheese, but the depth of it is that it has this yearning built into it. It's gorgeous to listen to. I mean, it was, most of 59% of the songs have, 2 or 3 members of Toto on them. And it's kind of the apotheosis of studio session music. Yeah. But also, it's very yearning. It's melancholic. Someone is always, there's some sort of goal or a lady or situation that's just at the beach. So listening to the music is one of those things that it makes you feel nostalgic for a time you never lived, and also makes you feel like you're living a millionaire lifestyle. It's a soundtrack for that. And this is a project that I've worked on for a year. I sourced the music. A lot of it is stuff that you can't get on Spotify. You have to buy the box set. And I sequenced it, and then I wrote the sleeve notes. So it comes in a gorgeous package, lovingly annotated by me. And it's the thing about this music is that even people who feel like they're ice cold, into only the most connoisseur's choice of music, they find that, oh my gosh, these are toe tappers. I never thought at the time. I was never seeking this music out, Mark. I mean, I was driving into DC to go to the 9:30
No,
club.
It's a weird contrast, the kind of stuff that you were actually actively going to see. But
yeah, so I'd be driving in to go see Nico or to watch Suicide or remember Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds or Psychedelic Furs or any of these bands that were coming
and racing back home and putting on Loggins and Messina.
No, it would be on my car radio driving.
Yeah, it would. Yeah,
it was all. I mean, and that's how we all listen to music. We like
that's true. FM.
Yep.
Completely fantastic. Oh well, very good. And how extraordinary all that is. My goodness. And I hope the Kingdom Come project goes well. That's terrific.
Yeah, no, we're really enjoying getting worked up for it, and it's one of those things that it's not a tribute band. It's I guess on paper it's a covers band, but we totally reinvest this beautiful, much loved, powerful music with our own spirit and utterly reinvent it and reinterpret it.
Brilliant. Well, it's been really lovely talking to you, and thank you very much.
Word in Your Attic, a Zoom with a View.